Alex Haley says, in every conceivable manner, the family is a link to our past and a bridge to our future. J.P. Holloway believes that as well. In 4 interviews, he explains why we are still Holloways, leaving Mississippi and Grandma Duffy. He draws a picture for me and lets me into the past. And this is just the beginning. Grandma Duffy was an African woman who could read and write. Mr. Atwater purchased her for that very reason. Mr. Atwater gave her the name Duffy. This is not her real name. Slave records never gave the name of the slaves, only the age and gender. I have to find the bill of sale for Mr. Atwater. On that paper, it will have Grandma Duffy's real name and the part of Africa she originates from. Grandma Duffy and Mr. Atwater conceived 3 daughters. This is not uncommon during slavery. One of the daughters were sold to Mr. Holloway, Fanny. While on the Holloway plantation in Georgia, Fanny married Dan Holloway. Dan was the son of the master of the Holloway plantation. He became ill and sold his slaves. Because Dan was his son, he allowed Dan, Fanny, and their children to keep their name. During slavery times, the slaves carried the names of their masters. In the South, slaves were a pool of skilled and semi-skilled laborers. Many slaves had learned marketable trades, and the rest were in-house personal servants. A slave's value to his and her owner lie in the work the slave performed. If a slave had a skill that could be marketed outside of the owner's home, then the slave labor could be sold, and the wages received would accrue directly to the owner. Receipts for plantation slave hires are relatively common. After the names were given to me, I searched hundreds of census forms, matching names and birthdays, filling in the gaps, and finding names of relatives close and far. I was proud of the discoveries I made, saddened by the American past that everyone so politely ignores at times. But I continue to move on and look for new information. Sim Oliver Holloway is the son of Dan and Fanny Holloway. After slavery was abolished, Dan and Fanny kept their family in Mississippi and continued to work for the Short family. Sim Holloway was a respected man in Como, Mississippi, and worked with the Short family until he passed. In my search for information, I found his World War I registration card. He was described as short, and he worked for a man named J.P. Short. Sim Oliver named his son after his boss. I found that interesting. Sim Oliver married Agnes Hunt. They had 5 children. Sim Oliver had 3 children from a previous marriage. J.P. Holloway was born May 28, 1917. He wants his family to know their history and be proud of their ancestors because they endured and they survived.
My name is Chloe, and I'm the great-granddaughter of J.P. Holloway.
Mr. J.P. Holloway wants his great-granddaughter Chloe to see the census papers for herself. He wants her to see that her ancestors, her people, knew how to read and write. They owned property. This is important to him. He feels this will make her proud.
Even though my great-grandfather was a laborer for the last family that owned the Holloways, he is still willing to tell his stories and his adventures of how they treated him. and does not have anger behind the words that he speaks. I think knowing my family history is important because you always hear the stories about the slaves escaping from the South and all of the civil rights movements, and you wonder what your family played in it. I know that my great-grandfather marched with Martin Luther King, but I wonder what happened before it. I feel like it's better for me finding out my own family history because even when the schools do talk about Black History Month, they really don't get into the details.
Chloe believes her great grandfather's story is important to her and her family. She is proud of her family and its history. She says the slavery part is just as important as everything else. She believes it makes all of us stronger. J.P. Holloway believes it is our responsibility to teach and share our history with the children. We came from a strong and educated family. This is only the beginning as I research our family history.